Hello, my name is Roger Pace. This video is about cleaning and lubricating a Beretta Silver Pigeon 1 Sporter 30-inch barrels. The gun has already been cleaned, and I'll just take off the fore end. So when I clean the gun, I spray down the barrels with this G96. I found it to be very useful. I let it stay for about a minute, and then I run a bore snake through the barrels 2 or 3 times, and the chokes, of course, are still in. After I've done that, I'll give it another spray, and I run through this rag, which I just made myself. It's just a microfiber cloth with some ribbon attached. Put that through the barrels and run it through. And I find that does a really good job of cleaning out the barrels. I haven't got one of those commercial swabs. I use this, and I find that it works very, very well. So I spray, after shooting the gun, I spray all the monoblock. I wipe off all the grease and oil first, then I spray it with the gun oil, the G96, let it sit for a while, and then with a toothbrush I brush off all the oil that I've sprayed on there, and it comes out nice and clean. And I also spray in the ejectors there where the springs are, and I keep it down this way so that all the gunk flows out that way rather than back into the ejector springs. So that's the cleaning side of it, of the barrels. On the receiver, I hold it down this way. I spray into the bottom there. I spray, first of all I wipe off all the grease. I spray in there, and then with a brush I clean all the inside and the locking pins and the firing pins, so it's all brushed, and then I keep it down this way so it all drains out and doesn't go back into the mechanism in there. So that's the cleaning of the gun. With the barrels, once I've run the bore snake through 2 or 3 times, then I take the chokes off, and then I run the rag through, because if you run the bore snake with the chokes off, it can affect the threads on the inside of the barrels. And when I replace a choke, these are the Optima Bore HP chokes. When I replace a choke, I put a line of grease along the threads, and I run my thumb around it to spread the grease all evenly on the thread. I grease that part of the choke, and then I also put a little bit of grease on the end of my finger, and I put grease inside the barrel where the thread is, and then of course screw them in until the choke is reasonably tight, not too tight, just hand tighten it and it's fine. So that's the cleaning of the gun. The actual lubrication, there's the Beretta oil that's supplied, and there is also, I use this grease, no particular reason. It's white. I first, on another gun, I used some black grease, and then when you handle it you get black grease all over you. So this white grease seems to do the job. So in lubricating the gun, I use grease and oil. I only put oil on the ejectors where it slides, but not every time because it can gunk up. And I put a little dab of oil in the ejectors where they slide in and out. And I also put a tiny little bit of oil in the barrels where they lock up, those two holes in the barrels where it locks up. And you can put a tiny bit of grease there. So I use a combination of oil and grease. So first of all, I'm going to grease up the monoblock, the barrels here. And I've seen other videos and they don't do a close-up and you don't really see where they put the grease. So I'm going to get a bit closer, and I actually put a little bit of grease there, and then I turn it over and I put a bit of grease there. Okay, I put a little tiny bit of grease there where they go into the ejectors, and now that is enough grease to do the whole gun. Then I use a tiny brush, just an artist's brush. It's about 5 millimeters wide, and I brush the grease into there. I go around that pin there, and then I give everything a light coat of grease. I'll give it a light coat of grease everywhere. So that side is done. And then again, get the grease out of that little recess there, leave a fair bit on there. And then around the ejector pin there. And then I give it a thin coat of grease everywhere. And then inside here, where it locks up, I put the brush into that hole. That gives it a bit of grease into the lockup where the pins go, and a bit of grease in there. And just a tiny brush on the ejector and the ejector. And I even put just a bit there where the ejectors hit the back face of the receiver. So that's the monoblock all greased up and ready to go. Then I put a tiny little bit of oil, of grease, on this little lug where the fore end goes, and then I put the fore end on. And so the fore end goes on, and that's all ready to go. On the receiver, I put the important part to oil is this knuckle, because that's where it turns on the barrels and everything. So that's pretty important. So I put some grease. I put some grease along there, and some grease along there. Then I put it on the pin here and on the pin there. So I've put grease on the knuckle and on those two pins. Then with the brush, I make sure that I put that grease all around the pin, so that there's grease all around that pin. Hope you can see it. And then I move the grease all around the other pin on the other side. Having done that, I then brush the grease into where those ejector pins go, in this channel and also in that channel. And there's plenty of grease on the brush. You don't need a lot. And then on the knuckle, just go down with the brush, down with the brush. On this part here where it rubs metal to metal, just a tiny little brush on those rods. And then I put grease all over the side of the receiver there. Just a tiny thin smear. And it just puts a tiny thin smear on the receiver everywhere that there's metal to metal. And I just put some on the back of the receiver. Just a dab with the brush on the locking lugs. And the whole thing now is all nicely lubed up, ready to go. So now that it's lubed up, we can put it together. And so to put it together, we take off the fore end, all greased up. It's fairly hard to put together because the gun's new. Hopefully I'll do it a bit quicker this time, now that it's greased up. And so it's all together. The fore end goes on. And there it is, all connected, all greased up, ready to go. And for those of you who are interested, that is the position of where the lever remains. So the gun's still fairly tight. So the lever is a fair way to the right, but that'll work its way a bit more to the centre as I fire more shots through it. So that's what I do to clean and lubricate the Beretta Silver Pigeon 1 Sporter. This time I haven't put oil into the ejector slides, but every month or so I'll put a drop of oil into the ejector slides. The people at Beretta, I've spoken to them. I saw them at a carnival a few weeks ago, and they said, and I explained to them how I lubricate my gun, and they said putting that grease on there everywhere is fine if you clean your gun often, which I do. If you don't clean your gun often, then just use oil everywhere. But if you clean your gun often, it's fine to put grease everywhere, because every time you shoot the gun and you come home, you take the grease off, give it a spray, clean all the grease off, and then start again, re-grease. Because if dust mixes in with the grease, then you've got a grit and it'll make it wear. So I hope that that's useful. I hope I haven't missed anything out. If I have missed something out, then just ask me a question and I will try and answer it. Thank you for watching.